Coming up on Arirang News, the joint security area on the heavily fortified border between South and North Korea has reopened to tourists. With tensions lowered now, visitors say the new tour symbolizes peace. As South Korea celebrates Labor Day, President Moon says he wants to build a country where people take pride in their labor. The main labor unions, meanwhile, hold demonstrations demanding reform. And Korea's exports were down again in April compared to a year ago. Again, the decline in semiconductor sales to blame, but also weaker shipments to China because of its trade war with the U.S. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. Last October, tours to the joint security area were halted for a while because of joint projects between the two Koreas. But now they're back on, and tourists say now the vibe is different. Our Kim Ji-yeon went to check it out.
A tourist destination that had attracted millions of people a year from all over the world has reopened to the public after a 7-month hiatus, this time with renewed significance. The once heavily guarded inter-Korean truce village of Panmunjom, which is located on the southern side of the Joint Security Area, or JSA, is now associated with peace, prosperity, and the disarmament of the two Koreas. Tours have been sought because of the work of removal of landmines and military posts in the DMZ. The operations were part of the Inter-Korean Comprehensive Military Agreement signed last September aimed at disarming the JSA. Seoul's Defense Ministry also says it's working with North Korea and the UN command to allow visitors access to the northern side of the JSA. Civilian access to previously off-limit areas that played symbolic roles in the first inter-Korean summit between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held last April are now included on the tours. This includes the Blue Foot Bridge the two leaders strolled over, as well as a memorial tree they planted near the military demarcation line.
What you'll feel here in Panmunjom is a different vibe. We've taken away the landmines. We've ensured that the side has been demined. We've taken the weapons out of the towers. Our guards no longer carry weapons.
I really wish I had the chance to visit the northern side of the JSA, currently blocked by a line of cement. I wanted to cross over to step on its soil and meet the North Korean people.
My favorite part of the tour was the footbridge. I still remember during this time last year, the leaders of the two Koreas discussing peace in the region at this very place.
Initially, there will be a daily limit of 4 tour groups with a maximum of 82 people in each group, but that will be expanded to 8 groups a day from June. South Korean nationals can apply for the tour online through the National Intelligence Service website, while foreigners can apply through tour agencies listed on the websites of the NIS or the Unification Ministry's Office of Inter-Korean Dialogue. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News, Panmunjom.
The South Korean province of Gangwon-do in the east was hit by massive wildfires last month. To help the people affected and to speed up restoration efforts, the government has unveiled a comprehensive support package. Kim Min-ji has the details.
The South Korean government will spend around $160 million to deal with the aftermath of a recent series of forest fires in Gangwon-do Province. The decision was reached on Wednesday during a meeting between the ruling Democratic Party, related government ministries, and the presidential office.
The government and ruling party will devise all possible means and methods. We will use state funds and public donations to support the displaced, injured, and families of the bereaved. We hope these measures will be able to lessen the pain of the victims.
The funds will be used to provide temporary housing for the displaced, as well as to provide agricultural machinery before the harvest season. A portion will also be set aside for forest restoration. The government will also officially spend $40 million raised from public donations for the victims.
We've drawn up the support package based on the most necessary things, as well as requests from the people for living stability and for rehabilitation. If there are any areas that need to be bolstered, we will improve those areas.
The fires broke out across Gangwon-do Province in early April, causing over $110 million in damages. It burned over 500 houses, left 2 people dead and more than 1,000 others displaced. The 5 regions engulfed in the blaze have been designated as special disaster zones, enabling the affected areas and their residents to receive government support.
A lot of work was needed to put this comprehensive package together. We will do our best to set a good example of recovery work as soon as possible.
The 3 sides also noted the need for the National Assembly to quickly pass the government's supplementary budget bill, which includes another $80 million for fire restoration efforts. They vowed to step up preparations so that the extra budget can be implemented as soon as it's approved. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Japan has a new emperor today, marking the start of a new era in the country's history that'll be called Reiwa. His father, Emperor Akihito, had abdicated yesterday. Hong Yu has more.
Crown Prince Naruhito, the son of the former Emperor Akihito, has inherited the 3 sacred treasures of Japan, which are the sword, the mirror, and the jewel at the state enthronement ceremony. These imperial regalia will be the proof of his succession as the nation's 126th emperor. Naruhito's wife Masako and daughter Aiko were not present at his first ritual as emperor due to a palace tradition that does not allow female members of the royal family to attend. Shortly after, the emperor made his first public remarks alongside representatives from the 3 branches of government. The Japanese emperor has no political power under Japan's constitution, but it is a symbol of the state and the people's unity, which makes the emperor more popular than any politician. Recent media surveys have shown public support for the imperial family at 80%. Naruhito had previously said he would largely emulate his father's pacifist stance and compassion for the people, but also said he will seek a role of his own, possibly in issues related to water, disaster resilience, and the environment, something that would appeal to Japan's post-war generations. The ritual of celebrating Naruhito's succession will continue throughout the year until November 15th. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Korea's exports were down again last month, yet again mainly on semiconductors, which have been fetching far lower prices compared to last year. But with things improving in the chip industry, it seems things will turn around later this year. Our Ko Ryun-hee reports.
Semiconductors account for around 1/5 of South Korea's total outbound shipments, and the falling prices and lower demand have been dragging down the nation's overall exports since December last year. According to the Trade Ministry on Wednesday, South Korea's exports marked around $48.9 billion last month. This is down 2% from April 2018. As for why, the ministry pointed to the fall in chip exports. The amount plunged more than 13% on year. Analysts have also been pointing to falling chip prices and lower demand for the downward trend. For instance, according to market tracker DRAM Exchange, the price of a DDR4 8GB DRAM marked $4 on average on Tuesday, down 12% on month. Making matters worse, many IT companies have been delaying investment or clearing stocks, leading to lower demand. Another reason is the slower growth of China's economy. Many worry that South Korea's shipments to China are decreasing due to the ongoing trade tensions between Washington and Beijing. China's GDP growth marked 6.4% in the first quarter of this year, down from last year's figure of 6.6%. On a brighter note, the Trade Ministry pointed out that the pace of decrease is slowing down, and added total exports increased if semiconductor shipments weren't taken into account. Meanwhile, South Korea's imports increased more than 2% on year in April, marking around $44.7 billion. The Trade Ministry says export figures are likely to improve in the second half of this year, as demand for chips increases and shipments of autos and ships continue to maintain their solid performance. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
One thing that might take some pressure off of China's trading partners like Korea is a trade deal between Beijing and Washington. They're in another round of talks this week, and both sides are sounding optimistic. Lee Seung-jae has this report.
U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer is in Beijing for the 10th round of high-level negotiations as the two economic powerhouses look for ways to end their trade war. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who arrived earlier, remains optimistic, saying he hopes to make substantial progress with Chinese negotiators in the next two rounds of trade talks with their Chinese counterpart Vice Premier Liu He. China also showed optimism that an agreement would be reached.
What I want to say is substantive progress has been made on trade talks. In accordance with consensus reached by our leaders, both China and the US will work together and meet each other halfway to reach a win-win agreement based on mutual respect as early as possible.
According to the White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney on Tuesday, talks between the two countries aimed at resolving their trade dispute will likely be resolved one way or the other in the next 2 weeks. However, Mulvaney says it doesn't necessarily mean the negotiations will end with an agreement, instead indicating the talks could end in a deadlock once again. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, citing officials briefed on the talks, the punitive tariffs the two governments slapped on each country's goods in the conflict remain a major obstacle. It added that the biggest issue is how much of the tariffs will be removed, as the U.S. wants to leave some in place as a tool to enforce the agreement. Aside from the tariffs and enforcement, the U.S. negotiators are looking for solutions in other areas, which include persuading China to provide greater access to China's cloud computing and agricultural markets. Beijing, meanwhile, may be seeking all U.S. tariffs to be lifted before any further discussions take place, suggesting the negotiations are far from over. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's time now for an in-depth look at stocks and the economy. And for that, we're joined by Dr. Yang Jun-sak, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Dr. Yang, thanks for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Well, the U.S. has changed course on rates and earnings strong from big companies. Stocks in the U.S. on Tuesday were mixed, but the S&P rising to another new high. What's behind the rally there, and is there momentum to keep it going?
Okay, well, despite all concerns, the chief indicators for the United States economy seems to be doing well, namely unemployment, inflation, and growth rate. The first quarter growth for the United States came in at 3.2 annualized percent rate, and that's much higher than expected, which was around 2.3%, and it's also much higher than the fourth quarter growth, which was 2.2% annualized. And consumption was especially higher than expected at 1.2% growth, and exports also higher than expected. So the growth rate, the U.S. economy seems to be stronger than people realized. And then the unemployment is still low at 3.8%. Inflation also remains low at 1.9% for overall inflation, 2.1% for core inflation. So the United States economy, despite all the worries, at least for now, seems very healthy, and it did better than people expected, so that seems to be behind the rally. The question, of course, is whether this will continue. I think most analysts, at least for now, doubt that this good luck will continue, but we'll have to see. And because of the better-than-expected performance, I think that was the reason why the stock market went higher.
Yeah, a lot of figures you mentioned supporting the rally there, but in Korea, a different story. We had GDP growth in the first quarter in negative territory. Then yesterday, we see industrial production and investment both up. Is that a sign the GDP situation and otherwise is heading for a turnaround?
I don't think it's heading for a turnaround. I think it's more of numbers being unstable at the moment. Now, being unstable is better than being on a downward trend, but most of the turnaround came because the February numbers for Korea was so bad that March numbers virtually had to improve. So overall, if you look at the entire first quarter, things are still not going our way, but at least there's a couple of good news in there. The first is that the consumption is going up, and the key to a turnaround, if there is any, is going to be consumption. And then the numbers, because they came back a bit in March does mean that the numbers are not necessarily on a downward trend, but rather unstable. That means there's always a chance that things will rebound. It's overall, it's not that good a news, but it could have been worse.
Well, of course, Korean markets closed today. Japanese markets closed as well. But let's spend some time on Japan for a minute with their new emperor. In the new Reiwa era, do you see things going differently for Japan economically? Of course, they had a great deal of stagnation during the previous era. Will things be different going forward for Japan, perhaps in its relations with Korea too?
Okay, well, during the last phase, the Heisei age, they had two big problems. One was that the bubble burst, which resulted in lost 20 years of Japanese economy, and then coupled with that was a demographics problem, which made the problem worse because, well, in order to deal with the slowdown in the economy, Japan had to lower the interest rate, and that really created a lot of problems with people's retirement plans when the old age part of the population was growing. Now, they're at least coming out of one of those problems because there's so many older people and very few younger people. Now, the Japanese economy seems to be facing a shortage of young workers. So at least from that point of view, their demographics problem may be getting a bit better. The younger people may have better opportunities getting jobs, which means they'll be more hopeful. The economy will be more stable, and their birth rate may even go up slightly. But the slow growth economy is still going to be a problem, and I don't see that working out in the near future.
Well, looking ahead this week, we have the Federal Reserve Open Markets Committee. We have the U.S. sanctions on Iran banning their oil, that also taking effect, and that will affect Korea. Do you see that having any more influence on stocks, or is it priced in by now?
I think it's priced in for the most part, and it's not going to be. There's not going to be, I think, very many surprises. The FOMC United States, I think, because their numbers are better than they thought, they're going to take a wait-and-see attitude. They're not. They don't need to lower the rates. I don't think they're going to, in particular, hurry to raise the rates either, because, well, a lot of the future indicators do show that there will be a slowdown, and inflation is still low. As far as the Iran sanctions, the oil sanctions are concerned, well, Korea imports only about 5 to 6% of its oil from Iran. So Korea will be able to find alternate sources for oil, but they'll have to pay more, not merely because the global oil prices are rising, but Korea had been paying fairly inexpensive price for oil it's getting from Iran because, well, Iran had very few places that they could sell their oil to. So we'll probably be stuck with a double price shock in terms of oil, but I think that's already more or less factored into the market. So as long as there's no surprises on the horizon, I think most of these factors are already figured in. I think the big surprise, the big factor for the next week or two is actually the story you had a bit earlier about the disappointing trade surplus.
Okay, well, that's a number we'll have to watch. Dr. Yang, thanks. We'll have to leave it there for today. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Well, today, May 1st, is, of course, International Labor Day, an occasion to celebrate workers and promote their rights. South Korean President Moon Jae-in said in a Facebook post that he wants to make Korea a country where people can take pride in labor. He wants to see people fulfill their dreams and develop the world through labor, and to see skilled workers and technicians treated with respect. The president also emphasized that labor should endeavor to gain this respect by developing a win-win relationship with management, rather than struggle and resistance as it has in the past. Also to mark Labor Day, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions held a demonstration at Seoul Plaza this afternoon. This year they demanded that Korea fully abide by International Labor Organization agreements and abolish the huge family-run conglomerates known as chaebol. Korea's other main umbrella labor group, the Federation of Korean Trade Unions, held a Labor Day marathon starting in the financial district of Yeouido, which was joined by workers, their families, and migrant workers from other countries. There's a trend in Korea aimed at making the country and the planet a more sustainable place, beginning with eco-friendly packaging. Our Cha Sang-mi explains how this trend is changing the online shopping industry.
Online shopping has become a new norm in Korean households, with the industry worth more than $94 billion in 2018. Korea Integrated Logistics Association says that in 2013, 1.5 billion boxes were delivered annually, rising to over 2 billion in 2016 and topping 2.5 billion last year. Targeting trash produced from such boxes, a new trend of packaging diet is in vogue, cutting down on materials that harm the environment. Masking tape takes nearly 100 years to decompose, so one company designed boxes that don't need the tape.
Working in the parcel delivery service industry for 12 years, I thought it'd be so much more convenient for people if there were boxes without tape. So I structured that box in my head and pitched the idea, and my brother designed it with me.
The brothers' flagship product, just as the company name, is the Wing Box. Small wings on the sides of the box come with ecological hot melt adhesives, harmless for people and the environment. Going a bit further, delivery service company Hello Nature has developed a returnable delivery box called the Green Box.
The major feature of Green Box is its ability to be returned, unlike conventional boxes. Also, you open the box with a zipper instead of tape, and it doesn't need plastic or air buffers to keep products fresh.
And to recycle ice packs, Seoul's Gangwon-do district has installed ice pack collection boxes.
We began the campaign this March when we signed an agreement with Hyundai Home Shopping Network Corporation and a civic environment group. The civic group goes around and cleans all 18 installed boxes a week, and we continue to raise awareness of the campaign.
There are 17 other collection boxes like this throughout Gangwon-do district. Residents can come and throw in their ice packs whenever they like. Then these ice packs are collected every month to be reused. The local government is thinking of reusing the collected ice packs at local markets to keep fresh fish or vegetables cool. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
South Korea last month became the first country to launch a 5G mobile network for consumers. But it seems Korean businesses who had a head start on 5G are already using it for practical purposes. For example, it allows construction companies to control heavy machinery on other continents. Oh Soo-young has more.
A 40-ton excavator at a construction site in Germany can be controlled from over 8,500 kilometers away in the South Korean city of Incheon. Earlier this month, Korean construction giant Doosan became the first firm in the world to remotely control machines on the other side of the planet. Running on-site operations through live video streaming, 3D machine guidance and real-time diagnostics doesn't just save time and money, but also enables remote handling in dangerous situations, such as the disposal of toxic materials.
A human worker can step in when necessary, remotely and efficiently handle multiple machines at once.
Smart factory solutions are one of the main sectors of application for the 5G wireless network, with data speed reaching 20 times faster than LTE and near zero lag time of 1 millisecond. It's expected to breathe life into the manufacturing sector, which makes up 1/3 of Korea's GDP. According to the Startup Ministry, nearly 8,000 firms last year with smart factory solutions saw productivity increase by 30%, while reducing the number of faulty items by 44%. The number of on-site accidents also fell by 22%. This local firm in Central Seoul has been developing smart displays and glasses based on augmented reality. Real-time data feeds through the lenses, providing guidance throughout the factory with crucial details such as inventory levels or instructions you have to follow.
New employees without much field experience can easily and safely carry out their tasks. Often in factories, workers have their hands full with tools, but with the smart glasses on, they don't need to hold on to any safety manuals, checklists, or phones to refer to as they work.
The smart glass is part of SK Telecom's 5G factory solution, which also incorporates autonomous mobile robots and AI monitoring cameras into the production line. The government plans to roll out smart factory systems across 30,000 local companies by 2022. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, before we go, it is Labor Day in many countries, so that means a lot of stock markets are closed on this Wednesday. That includes several of the main markets in Europe, Germany, France, and Italy. Also, Shanghai and Hong Kong. London and New York, however, will remain open. And that does it for this hour. Thank you for watching.